All right, car repair fans. I'm working on a 2001 330i today. It's got a lot of problems. The first one I'm going to show you is how to replace the fuel pump in this guy. We've got problems in the engine up here too with the PCV system or CCV system, however you want to call it. But one of the things I'm doing with this is also replacing the fuel pump because it is original to the car. You might be able to guess that from the multiple layers of dirt all over the top of it. And to access this, like I didn't show this because it's pretty easy, but the seat cushion, the back seat, you just literally just kind of grab a hold of the end of it and just pull it up, and then it just kind of slides right out of the car. No biggie there. And then you've got these rubber flaps here. They peel back. There are 4 nuts that hold this metal lid on to these studs right here. And then this connector, which goes onto the pump to power it, and also has the carries the information for the fuel level. It's got kind of a little trick connector here. This thing slides back and forth. I don't know if I can show it to you, but when it's on here, well, here, I'll just show you. So it has like a sliding mechanism, and it's got to be, you can see how the front of this is slid out, and then it will allow you, if it doesn't, the thing is it keeps sliding back in on me here. You got to keep that pushed out in order to get it down onto the connector, onto the pump. Okay, like so. And then you slide it forward to lock it, see? And then when you're pulling it off, you pull it backwards, and then up and off the pump. I'm making this look harder than it is, just because I'm doing it one-handed. There, you saw it come up, and now you just pull it off. Bit of a trick there. There's only one hose on this pump, and this is the factory crimped hose clamp on here. I just used a big hefty pair of the Craftsman diagonal cutters. You just kind of grab a hold of it, work it around, twist it around, and it'll break. If you don't have any fuel leaks back here, I guess you could use a Dremel. I've seen some videos of some guys doing that, and people are just like lambasting them for doing it, but I don't think it's a big deal. Keep a fire extinguisher handy and use the Dremel. The sparks aren't that hot, you know what I mean? If you know anything about it, then you take your risks as you see fit. So get this thing off, and then there's a procedure to relieve fuel pressure. On this car, I'm not too worried about it because it doesn't run. I don't think there's any fuel pressure on here, but if you're just doing it for preventative maintenance, you're going to pull the fuse that runs the fuel pump, start the car, let the car die, open you take the gas filler cap out, and it relieves all the pressure off the line, supposedly. Still, be careful with that. So I'll take this line off next, then we'll take off the locking ring, and then the pump just pulls out. So if yours is original, this hose is going to be really hard to come off. I just take a flat blade and I just kind of push it back and work it around and just take my time. Try not to tear up that hose. I also use this to break it loose initially. This is I think this is a radiator hose removal tool by Lysol, however you say that. But use whatever tool is your choice. Just don't tear up your tube. And then eventually it just slips off, and there wasn't any pressure on here. Like I said, I use old socks for rags. A little bit of fuel leaked out, but it wasn't anything too bad. So then once that's done, we'll get this locking ring off and pull it out. And so this, like many other ones I've worked on, this locking ring just righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I'm using a big screwdriver here just to get a hold of one of those nubs, and then a little sledge just to back it off till you can do it by hand. You know, be careful. You might make some sparks, and you've got loose gas here. Make sure you're ready in case a fire happens. Don't be too cavalier about it. If this is stuck, so there are some, just depends on how it is. Like, you see those little locking tabs down there, like right where I'm got the light focused. You may have to mess with those. There's one on either side. That's kind of under these lines over here, these vent lines. I don't know if you can see that one. Yeah, there it is. They may be preventing you from turning that ring. If so, you may have to massage things around. Your mileage may vary on all this. So after a few rounds of, you know, just gently tapping and then going with the next tab and tapping it down and so on, it'll get to where it's, you know, hand tight. And this will come off. All right, so I'll take this. I just put this on here to keep it from kind of weeping gas out to the whole deal. I'll take it off. We'll pull this whole assembly out. And then here's the new one. So what you always wind up having to do with these things is, you know, this old pump is going to pull up until it hits that float right there. It's still wrapped in plastic. You're going to have to angle the thing around to get it to do whatever. Some of them, those little floats will they kind of bend up or out, or sometimes they come completely out of the sending unit over here. Just whatever you got to do to get the old one out. It doesn't really matter. So in my particular case here, with this pump being original, was very stuck down to that retaining ring on the side, and just had to use a little bit of force to get her up, and then you can see it just that's it. Then it starts to come up. Then you got to do the the dance to get this thing weaseled out of here. It's just how they are. And I always have a bucket to put it in, because this whole thing on these fills up with fuel, so you don't want to be getting fuel everywhere. And there I can see one of the internal hoses to the fuel pump assembly. That's what's got us bound up on the tank. So I'll put the phone down and get this out. So I've got her out, and then I always just check down in there and see, is there any junk or anything in there that shouldn't be. And this one looks pretty good. You can see that plastic piece there stays in the bottom. That's kind of your baffles that keeps your pump primed with fuel. So what I was saying before about this assembly being filled with fuel, wasn't correct on this particular car, because part of that stays in the car. But then it's always good once you get the old one out to lay it down next to the new one and make sure everything looks the same. Okay, and I made sure when we bought the new one that we got the one that had the seal on it. Looks like some maybe didn't come with it, but we've got all the outlets on top are the same. Looks like we got the same fuel sending mechanisms. We got the strainer on the bottom, the fuel pump, which is great. Sometimes on some newer pumps they don't have the strainer, or it's internal, I guess, now to some of these assemblies. Like on this car here, 2002 Camaro Z28, when I pulled out my old pump, it had a strainer on it. When I ordered the new pump, the AC Delco one, it didn't have a strainer. And I remember reading on Rock Auto, it just said it was a new design, internal strainer or something like that. Kind of freaked me out, but it's been working great. So anyway, that's that. Just make sure all that stuff is copacetic, and then we will drop this new one in. Okay, one thing I've noticed here that is different to me on other cars I've worked on is that this tank opening itself has a rubber O-ring on it, or a rubber gasket I should say. It's not really an O-ring. And then the pump itself has one. So make sure that, I don't know if this thing can come out or not, but make sure that you've got one on here when you go to put your stuff back in. So I've taken the plastic off the float, so now I'm just gonna ease that guy in there like so. Get it past the strainer. Okay, and then just ease it down in here, and You know, kind of remember how you got obviously gonna have to get it oriented the same way that it was before. And there's a little basket down in there that all that stuff sits in, remember? So just there you go. I felt it drop down a little bit. So just ease it down in there. Now we've got a big thick gasket that's got to work down into place too, which is going to take two hands. But you know, you're going to push that down in there and just to make sure it's sealed up. Put this on and that on and the other things on, and that's it. Alright, so after a couple of false starts, I think what I've found here on this car is that if you take that sealing ring kind of off the top of the pump first and get it seated along the sealing ring of the fuel tank, see there, I've got, that's the one you see is the one that came with the pump, and it's sitting inside the seal for the fuel tank, and now I think the pump can just drop right down into that seal. So I'll try that, because if you put that ring up on the top of the pump first, you're never going to get all the lips to line up the right way. So if my theory is correct, this should slip down in here much easier now. I might actually throw a little gas around the top of that ring just to help it slide in. Okay, so I didn't use gas around it. I did use a little bit of WD-40. I just put some on the tip of my glove here and just put it around the inside ring, and then it just slipped right down in there. So now we'll put that so you want to make sure you get the order right, because if you put the connector on and the fuel hose on and you forget to put that big lock ring on there, you have to take them back off. So next I'll put on this with a new hose clamp. No, so next I'll tighten it down, and then I'll put that on with a hose clamp, and then that was a test. Alright, so now I've got the lock ring on there, twisted it on as hard as I could go by hand, and then just took the screwdriver and the hammer and tapped it back another, I might have moved this tab up to here. So what is that, about a fifth of a turn, something like that. The important thing is to, you know, make sure there's no, you can't lift that pump up and out even a little bit out of where it's seated, and that this isn't loose, and make sure, you know, you kind of run your fingers around it, make sure you don't have a cross threaded or something stupid, and just use your common sense with it. If something's not right and you get the car running, it will be apparent because you will smell gas. So some of you guys might have seen this already. I didn't until I just went to try to put the hose on. This has a protector over the fuel outlet, so take that one off before you put your hose on. You get the hose on, put your connector back on, you put that access panel back on with the 4 nuts on the studs, throw this thing back on, pull this rubber ring through that part, and then you slide your seat back in, and you can vroom vroom. Like any good repair job, turn the key on, make sure you hear noise from the pump, make sure it's not leaking out of that hose, and you should be good to go. Any questions, let me know, and thank you for watching.